Today, on The Power of Framing, we'll kickstart the week with a short story to frame a new virtue and gain a renewed focus. Are you ready? Let's step into the vault. As we explore honesty, I'm going to start with this question, and I'm going to give it a slight pregnant pause, because I really want it to sink in. How does your presence match your profession? And I'm not just talking about your profession for work. I mean, what you speak. So maybe behaviorally, the things that you show and act and live out. How does it match what you say? Let me give you an example. So, I remember a commander of mine, and he was a good commander, good Marine officer. He sat me and some other commanders down one day, and he said, "What do you all think of the mask of command?" And I applied my own mantra of being quick to listen, slow to speak. Because he looked at me first, he said, "Josh, I would love to hear your thoughts." I said, "Thanks, I'd love to share them, but I'm not going first." So I let all the other guys go, and they went back and forth. Some of them were grabbing at straws to see if it struck a chord with what they thought this commander might have wanted them to say. And then it came to be my turn. And I said, "Well, sir, I share sort of a different perspective than the rest of these guys, which isn't probably a shocker to you, but it's a fact." He said, "Okay, well, what do you think of this idea of mask of command?" And you can go look it up. And I told him, "Well, generally speaking," I said, "I think it's a cop-out." "Well, let me be honest." This is exactly what I said to him. I said, "Sir, I think the idea of a mask of command is about as useful as a bag of smashed assholes." There you go. There's my Marine talk. I said, "And if that sounds gross to you, sir, it's because I think it's disgusting, and I think it's pretty worthless." And I said, "And the reason I think that, I'm going to tell you. And that's the story I'm going to share." And I can rewind my military game tape back to my very first deployment to Iraq in 2003. And Iraq in 2003 for Marines was a pretty radical place to be. And I don't mean radical like rock on, let's go catch some waves. It was gnarly. It could be intense. It was all over the place. And I was an extremely young man. So I'm 18 years old, creeping on 19. I am only a private first class. I had only been promoted once. So I went from having no rank on my collar to having little mosquito wings on my collar. And we were in a place called Al Kut, and you can look it up. There was a little airstrip there. And I remember distinctly, there was a master sergeant and there was a captain who we worked with and for at the time. And this master sergeant told all of the enlisted, "Hey, anytime any of you have to either go outside of the wire, go on any sort of mission, do anything, when you come back, I want you to immediately report into me and let me know, hey, you've got 10 fingers and 10 toes, nothing got blown off, you're all healthy, and I just want to hear how it went." And he was a really good leader. And he said, and he went by the term top, which you can research that if you want, but it's what a lot of old master sergeants like to be called, top. So he said, "Don't call me master sergeant, just come and find me, say top. We're all good, 10 fingers, 10 toes, however many are back, return, give them sort of our quick situation report, sit rep, and just talk with them." He was really good about letting people decompress in an incredibly stressful environment. I'm talking like, we slept in what we call mop gear. So it's chemical suits if there was a chemical attack. We slept in those with gas masks on some nights because of certain missiles flying over. It was a crazy time. And people over there in that time frame can vouch for this. Me and my boy Gep and some others come in one time. And the gunnery sergeant goes, "Hey, top's in there with the skipper, captain." He said, "Top and the skipper in there smoking a stogie. Go ahead and just knock on the hatch and walk in. He's expecting you guys back. He wants to hear how it's going." And this captain, this officer at the time, was one who talked a good game when he was around the master sergeant. But I had seen on a lot of occasions he was quite two-faced, depending on who he was around. But he always tried to put on a good show, to be honest, in front of this master sergeant, because he really respected him. And this guy was an absolute war hero. So I come walking in with my boy right there with me. They're smoking a stogie. I knock on the hatch, and Top says, "Yeah, come on in." And I walk in, and I immediately said, "Hey, Top, Gap Eye and the others are back. This many return. 10 fingers, 10 toes. We're all set." And this captain jumped right in as I'm giving this report to the master sergeant, and we're talking back and forth using some pretty strong expletives, and said, "First of all, I don't believe you would barge in here while we're sitting here smoking the cigar and not even give me the greeting of the day." But after what we just come back in from doing, it sat differently. So I looked right at him. I was super young. I'm sitting there going like, man, this guy's snapping. We just came in off a stressful thing. And I snapped to attention. I said, "You're right. Good evening, sir." And he said, "You know what? Get out of here." And the master sergeant tried to say, "Sir, I would like to hear the rest." He said, "Well, all of you can get out of my face then. I'm going to enjoy my stogie. I don't believe this insubordination." And he just goes off. And it was sort of wild to me. I saw a two-faced side of this man. And that story stuck with me. And as I became an officer, I appreciated the transparent, honest approach to people. You don't have to like someone, but I think there's a lot of integrity in getting that same someone at every turn, in every situation. But let's bring it home, literally, because outside of this military scope, and that was very impressionable on me as a young Marine, and I said, if I ever become an officer, I never want to be that guy. It doesn't mean everyone's going to like me, but I do want to remain pretty steady state. Whoever you get, Josh around his little girls is going to be the same as now Major Morano. I've tried to live that. It hasn't been perfect, but that's been a goal. But let's bring it home to my oldest daughter. If we think back to the question I started with, how your presence matches your profession for the things you say, this happened just this morning. So right now, I'm sitting in Tartu, Estonia. So Tit-6, I love this country. Riho and Alice and Nella and Iris, my really dear friends and their daughters. We visit them out here in Tallinn, the area where they live. And I'm in Tartu for something with the Baltic Defense College. I love this country so much. And this morning, as I was getting ready to leave, it sounded like my oldest daughter was in her room crying. And I walked by my wife and I said, "Hey, babe, is someone in there crying? Have you seen Arya yet this morning?" She goes, "No, I haven't seen her, but I don't know. I can't hear anything." So I go into her room, I knock on the door, and she says, "Come in." And I could hear the sniffles. And I open up the door, and she's in there with a tissue, and her glasses are all fogged up. And it almost broke my heart. And I said, "Sweetheart, what is wrong?" And she looked at me and she said, "I'm fine." And as simple as that sounds, the whole day I've been thinking about how I want to frame this for you. And it might be an underwhelming story, but in that space, as difficult as it was for my daughter, that wasn't an honest response. And as a father, I had to sit there and do some shuffling really quick of how am I going to navigate this with her and maybe for her. So I knelt down and I just said, "Come here, give me a hug." And she ran right up to me and just leached onto me really quick, wrapped her arms and legs around me so tight. She's strong. I said, "Okay, easy. You're probably going to tap me out." "Okay, so what's going on?" She sort of laughed a little bit. And she said, "Daddy, I really am going to miss you. I don't want you to go away on another work trip right now. I wanted to spend the whole day with you, and you're about to leave." And I looked at her and I said, "It may seem silly, but that's the honest response, isn't it?" And she looked at me and she said, "Yeah, I'm sorry I lied to you and said everything was fine." And I didn't tell her, "Oh, you didn't lie," or "Oh, it's okay." I just said, "Sweetheart, thanks for saying that." I said, "Because I always want you to be honest. And I always want the things that you say to be apparent by the way that you behave and act." And I said, "Why do you think I could tell that you weren't being honest?" She said, "Because I was crying." I said, "Yeah." I said, "So emotions are good, And I don't want you to suppress those. But when you have them, if someone comes up to you and asks you about them, then it might be better to just be honest with what's inside of your heart. And she said, okay, Dad, I'll be honest next time. This week, I'm going to dive deep into this with my father's firstborn, my oldest sister, Jeanette. She is so full of integrity. She is one of the most precious people you will ever meet. For so many, she's not going to need an introduction, but it's such an honor to have her. And I wanted to honor her by giving her such a very important trait and virtue to explore and to share stories on. And she's got plenty. And I can't think of a better person to dive into this topic and off the hinges with than my oldest sister. It suits her so perfectly, and you are in for a treat. So get your questions in, because it is going to be fantastic. You don't want to miss this opportunity to engage with her. Ask her whatever you want. If it's outside the box of honesty, we'll entertain that as well. But try to keep it in the box, because this is a really important topic. We can't wait for you to join us. And I will see you on Wednesday.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Power of Framing. Follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platform, where I'll meet you on Wednesday and you can ask me anything you want. I'm honored to be a part of your story today, and I'm proud of your growth, my friend. I can't wait for our next time together, exploring the vault.